Hey guys, Mrs. Jess Outdoors here. So today we are going to be canning up some pickles. I've realized that I've canned a few times already this season and haven't made any canning videos, so I thought maybe it was time. So in a second, I will show you guys what we're going to be canning and what we have to do to prep to get it done. Talk to you in a second. All right, so what we're working with today are pickling cucumbers that I've grown in my garden and jalapenos. So we're going to make just traditional dill pickles using a Mrs. Wages dill pickle mix because I just love that flavor better than anything I've tried. And we're going to make pickled jalapeno slices. The first thing that I've done is I went ahead and kind of figured out, guesstimated about how many jars I would need. So I picked some and I'm just soaking them in the sink. These are the ones I'll do for my pickles. And then I have some smaller like jelly jars that I'll do for my jalapenos because we don't go through a giant jar of jalapenos at a time. So I have a few of them. I'm just washing them in soapy water. I'll rinse them, set them out to dry, and then I'll work with them from there. Meanwhile, I dug out most of my tools that I'm going to need. Obviously a measuring cup, a funnel, a canning funnel, a little tool that has a magnet here on the end. That's used to actually pull your lids out of the boiling water. These are like little tongs that we use for pulling the jars out of the boiling water bath. A ladle and a wooden spoon. And this is my pickling spoon. That's why he looks a little bleached out. I've got a big pot to make my pickling liquid in, my brine. I have an even bigger pot, a giant stock pot. This is what I use for my water bath. A lot of people buy water bath canners. That's fine. But the way I grew up, the way my grandma did it, my great grandma, they always just use a big old stock pot. So that's what I do. I'll put water in that. And then I get out this little saucepan back here, put water in it. And that's what I'm going to boil my lids in. So that's kind of my basic prep work. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and wash and dry all of the lids, rings, and jars. Set them out on the counter, and then we'll go over the next steps. Talk to you in a few. All right, so the first step I usually do, I go ahead and do my prep work. But while I'm doing my prep work, I start the water in my big stock pot. I fill it to right below the little bolts holding in the handles. And because it takes such a long time for this amount of water to boil, it gives me plenty of time to work on cleaning and dicing my vegetables, whatever I'm going to make, and work on my brine. So this round, we're going to do the pickled jalapenos. So I put on some gloves. I didn't want to burn my face every time I touched it. So I went ahead and cleaned them and cut them into rings. And then the recipe called for 3 cups of white vinegar, 1 cup of water, and 2 crushed cloves of garlic. And I put those in my pot back here. So now what I'm going to do is just sit and stir so, nothing scalds in this little pot while I wait for the water. And this will get boiling. Once it's boiling, it's go time. And I'll show you guys what we're going to do next. All right, guys. So our brine is boiling. So now what we do is we take it off the heat. When I'm doing a large batch of stuff, I will sanitize my jars in the dishwasher. I'm not doing that much. So what I do is I've got my water bath. It's boiling. I sanitize my jars just right in the canner. Use a pair of tongs, lift them up, soak them in. They get good and hot. Hot is super, super necessary. If you're going to put hot brine in a jar, you better be putting it in a hot jar. Otherwise, you're going to have something crack. I am doing what's called raw packing. So the jalapenos are not cooked, but all the liquid that goes in is going to be hot, as are the jars. So now it's just pretty much crunch time. We're going to leave about 1/2 inch of head space. Head space means the space you leave between the very top of the jar and the product that you put inside of it, including the liquid. So I'm just stuffing the jalapenos in there. I am wearing a glove again because, hot. That looks about right. Do that. Next, move my jar over here, take my brine and my ladle, and just scoop the brine in. Usually when I get a good idea on headspace, it right above the opening here, right there in my funnel. Yep, that's about right. So I've got one jar full. Now I've got to do this quick. I'm going to zip over to that little pan I told you guys about in the back, where I've had my lids heating up. If I can get them apart. There we go. It's a little magnet tool so you don't burn your fingers. You take a wet cloth, wipe the lid real quick. Make sure you don't have anything sticky or dirty or anything on there. Put your top on, grab a ring, and twist the ring on. You don't want to do it too tight. If you do it too tight, you're going to wind up with warped tops and your jars will not seal. I'm going to repeat that process about 4 times, and then we'll go ahead and process. All right, so all the jars are full. I wound up with 3. I use these little tongs. They have rubber on them. You can buy them in any little canning kit. Putting them in the water bath canner. One trick is to make sure your jars are not touching each other. The water needs to be the same heat all the way around. You just put them in gently. You don't want them to tip over. All right. Whew, that's hot. All right. Now we're boiling. We put the lid back on. I'm going to turn it down just a fuzz so it doesn't boil over completely. It'll stay at a nice rolling boil. And the last step to this is kitchen timer. And we're going to process them for 10 minutes. When the timer goes off, take the lid off and we'll pull them out and set them down. Start round 2 of dill pickles. All right, so to make canning more efficient for myself today, because I'm doing 2 items in small batches, well, the jalapenos process, I'm going ahead and I'm making the brine for my kosher dill pickles. I'm using Mrs. Wage's mix just because it's a really good spice mix that I like. It makes it easy, and I've got a lot of cucumbers this year. The recipe called for 7 1/3 cup water to 3 1/3 cup white vinegar and 1 package of Mrs. Wage's kosher dill pickle mix. So I'm going to add it to the pot. I put the vinegar and the water in. Just going to add the seasoning in. My whole house will smell like pickles tonight, that's for sure. And I'm going to get this going, stirring it on medium heat to a rolling boil. By the time this is done, the jalapenos will be done, and then we'll go ahead and can up our dill pickles. See you in a few minutes. So, our dill pickle brine is boiling like crazy. So the first thing you do, you turn it off and move it from the heat source. So it is boiling hot, ready to go. Next thing, I did the same thing with my jars like I did last time. I did add a little bit more water after the jalapenos were done because water does evaporate, and you've got to cover your jars by at least an inch or 2 before you water process them. So now I'm going to raw pack my pickling cucumbers. Raw pack, just again, like I said before, just means putting them in a jar, but the pickles, or the cucumbers actually, aren't cooked. I'm trying to shove as many in there as I can. I'm guessing I'll get probably about 2 jars of pickles. Yep. So there's 1. What I'll do next is take my funnel again, take my brine, and same thing with these. You want to leave about 1/2 inch of headspace. One really nice thing about pickling brine, because I'm only doing 2 quart jars of pickles, and that's a lot of brine filled up, about half this pot, a little bit more. The cool thing is cucumbers grow like crazy, so I'll probably have more tomorrow, and I can put leftover brine once it cools down into a container in the refrigerator, and it will last for about a week. And I can just put it back in a pot, heat it up, and use it again, which is really, really nice. So I'm going to do this one more time. When we process these, like last time, you put them in your water bath canner. Make sure that the water comes to a rolling boil when they're in there. If they cool down at all, which mine never really does, but sometimes it happens, then you want to make sure it returns to a rolling boil before you start your timer. And you can start your timer with quart jars of pickles. You want to process them in a water bath for 15 minutes. So once I get this and my second one done, I'll put them in the canner, make sure it's boiling, set my timer to 15 minutes, pull them out, set them on the table with my jalapenos. And that's it. Then you just don't mess with them for a little bit. You'll hear that glorious popping sound, and we'll be all set. See you guys in a bit. All right, so we got the dill pickles and the pickled jalapeno slices out of the canner. One thing to remember, and I did my best, but I didn't have that many cucumbers yet. Everything kind of shrinks once you get them in with that hot water, brine over them, and in the canner. So try and cram, even though you're like, oh my gosh, that's too much. Once you get them in there, they shrink. So, you know, I didn't have that many today. It's not such a big deal. The jalapenos I did get pretty well. But, you know, next time around, I'm going to have a ton of cucumbers, and these jars will be packed to the brim. But either way, they are all pickled, preserved. We'll probably be able to eat on them in a few weeks. It's always best to let them set and absorb some of that pickling brine, gives them their flavor. And that's about it. So happy gardening, guys, and happy canning. It's really not that tough. It's a little hot. Might be a little time intensive, but overall, it's well worth being able to preserve your homegrown produce. All right, talk to you later.